Hi, it's Bobbie from 5th Avenue Cake Designs, and October is not just for Halloween, it is also Pinktober, or Breast Cancer Awareness, and this particular video is extremely dear to my heart. I'm dedicating it to my dear friend Alia, who's been cancer-free for 16 years. I am also helping my daughter's project at her university, and 10% of the proceeds of these cookies will be donated to the Susan B. Komen project. So join me as we learn how to make this Tufted Awareness cookie. Alright, so I've got a piece of pink fondant here. I did not do any type of mix with it. These roses will be fine, so you don't have to worry. I want to keep everything as soft and edible as possible. And I'm going to roll it to an extremely tissue paper thin piece, and then I'll cut out my petals. Now I will be using my pasta machine, and I will be taking it down to an 8. I just want to get it to a nice thin consistency to go through the pasta machine. So I'm going to take it through the pasta machine now. So for each rose you will need 5 of these R4. They're the smallest petal cutter that I have, or a very, very small rose petal cutter. I'm having trouble getting them out, so I'm just going to use a little aid and gently just coax it out. And I'm scrubbing my cutter against my mat so that I don't get little hairs like I got on that one, which we're not going to use. So you want 10 petals nicely cut for each of the roses that you're going to do. And this is a quick, I call it a quick way of doing roses. Oh, he went jumping around, didn't he? It's a fun way if you're going to be putting a small rose on a cookie and you don't want to pipe them out. And you don't want to have to wait for a center bud to dry. Okay, so it looks like I need a few more. And I usually will cut a couple extra because some of these are not coming out as clean as I like. You can also use your finger to rub it against there, and that will clean off those little raggedy edges. So I got a hole in here. I'm going to use the top of a pin, which will be a little bit more gentle for my rose petals. So once I have enough rose petals cut out, I take my excess paste and put it away. Fondant, just like gum paste, can get hard and dried out if you don't keep it in a plastic bag. So just like any time you do a rose, we're going to soften the edges. And then instead of having a center, we're going to roll this in. So with spirals, you want it fairly tight as you can get it. And I don't want you to put anything to hold it shut because you're going to the fondant should be moist enough to hold itself shut. And just lay it to the side and grab another petal. And pretty much we're just going to do this the same way you do any rose. The difference is we're not going to be binding these, but we're still going to be cupping them. So we're cupping our rose. And then because it's fondant, I'm just going to use a little bit of water to attach it. And I'm coming up about halfway. I'm going to grab my spiral. And I'm going to go over the top of my spiral, making sure that my petal is higher than my spiral slightly. We don't want it too high. We don't want it to go hollow and get lost in there. Now I'm not going to close down this side because I'm going to spiral in the next one. I'm going to give a little pinch over here just to give it a nice realistic look. I'm going to lay it in a cell cut. I have a few, as I call them, quick roses that I'll do depending on the project that I'm doing. And this particular rose is perfect for cookies because it's small. It has a realistic look. But yet, I don't have to worry about making a teeny weeny bud. So I'm going to spiral him in. When I spiral him in, I'm going to put in my left side. Make sure that we are on the same height. Bring him around, leaving open that right side. I'll go ahead and close this side. It looks like it needs just a tad more water. I'll do that. So I can close that down. And I'll bring him in, and like I said, I won't close that side yet because I'm going to, actually, I'm sorry, I am going to close that side. The next one we're going to lay over it. So we're going to close both the sides. I'm going to go back and just add a little bit of a pinch here, a little bit of a pinch here, just to give that petal a nice, pretty look. And we're just going to take this to the medium or mid-size of a rose, or the transition stage. So right now we're still working on the bud. We're just cupping him in. I'm laying my fun foam down when I add my water, just so I don't get any water on my soft foam and it doesn't harm my petal. So you're going to pick a seam. You have two seams. Hold your rose down towards the bottom so that you don't damage your rose, and go directly over that seam, keeping the height exactly the same as you had it before. Now this time you're going to leave that right side open. I'll put him back in my cell cut, and we're giving our rose a little bit more definition than when it was a no-cut rose. Each time on these I am bringing the water about halfway up. The other reason I'm using water, you could use edible glue if you wanted to, is because it is going to be eaten, and so many people have an issue with raw egg whites, so I don't want to even entertain that at all. So we're going to bring this in, keeping it the same height as the other petals, maybe coming up a tiny bit more as we spiral, and leave that side open for our fifth petal. If you wanted to, you could go lighter on your outside petals to give it more of a realistic look, because petals get lighter as they open. For this project, I did not do that. But if you wanted to, you would just add a little bit more white fondant to your pink fondant. I used Sugar Flares Pink, and I put in about 1/8 of a toothpick size. And I have shown how to color fondant and gum paste in the past, so if you need to look at what 1/8 of a toothpick size is what I'm talking about, you can do that. This one is sticking just a tad, so I'm going to open it with my Dresden tool, but I want to give it that real look. Now our transition, our first one, we're going to cup like we did in the past. And we're going to come up about halfway on this first petal. We'll call him petal number 1. I'm going to close that. I'm going to find a seam that I want to go over. And this seam looks perfect. I'm going to go over him. It doesn't really matter, it's whichever you prefer. I'm going to bring this up just a tad higher than the other one. And I will leave one side open so that I can spiral it. On the second petal, we're going to do a little bit different. We are going to transition him. So I'm going to cup him, and then I'm going to turn him over. So he will be cupped facing out, away from the petal, and I'm not going to go up halfway. I'm going to go up maybe 1/4 of the way on my petal. And I'm going to start opening up my flower. So this is the part of the flower where some of the petals are cupping towards the flower and some are cupping away. This is an important step in any type of flower or in any type of rose that you do, whether it's a quick rose or it's your individual longer step rose. I'm going to leave him out, but I am going to curl the back of this just a little bit. And we'll go to petal number 3. Now in number 3, we're going to cup it again towards our flower. So we will bring him up about halfway. I'm going to bring him into the spiral. I don't want this to be as tight as the bud was, so I'm going to, as I bring him in, he's not going to be as close as the other one is. He's not going to be tucked in as much. And I'm going to pull him a little bit sideways. I've noticed that gives the flower more of a realistic open look. So we're going to take petal 4. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to add a tiny bit more movement into him. I'm going to flip him upside down. And I'm going to cup him and then turn him over and switch him to my fun foam and bring that water up about 1/4 of a way. I'll grab my rose. I'm going to open the last petal that I did. And actually this is petal 5, but I am going to put 6 on here. It just doesn't look complete to me. Okay. We'll take the last petal. I want to give him just a tad more movement. So I'm just going to go down slightly more. I will turn him over, cup him, turn him over again, And we'll go up 1/4 of a way. And put him in as well. Try and keep these last few petals the same height. And close everything down. Now before I do the rest, I'm going to make sure that the petals are how I want them to look. And they are. I just want to add just a little bit more frilling. You could grab a toothpick if you wanted to, or a cocktail stick. And then what I'm going to do, which is similar to your no-cut roses, I'm just going to gently pinch the bottom because I'm going to cut that off, which is why I love these so much for cookies, because I can have them lay flat. I don't need that extra piece. And then while I'm doing the rest of my cookie, I'll allow this guy to dry. So let's go to the next stage. All right, so now we're going to do the tufting part. And for this you just need some water. You need your little tufted pieces. And the trick to getting them to stay tufted is to give them about 2 to 3 minutes in between the time that you billow them and the time that you're going to put them on your cookie. And I do have a post showing exactly how to billow them. So you're going to add some water to your flour and a little bit to the center of your cookie. This part gets not tricky, but it gets a little bit cumbersome because we want to spiral this just as we would anything else. So we want one side tucked in and you want your right side tucked out. In order to do that, you're going to lay your petal down, and the easiest way I found was to come in with the back of my Dresden tool. Sometimes it'll move a little bit on you, but that's alright. Just don't squish it because you don't want to lose that pillowy look. And bring the two pieces together like so. And then just gently bring the corners down. Now it will take about 10 minutes for them to adhere fully so that they don't fall out. And from this point on, you're going to go ahead and do your cookie. You don't want to put too much water on, but you want to get enough on that they adhere. So put it on, lift up your previous, and you can turn your cookie, of course, to make it easier for yourself. Your previous billow tufted piece and bring it in. Just make sure that the corners are connected. And you're going to continue to do that. Because this cookie is a plaque cookie, you're not going to keep going around in a circle, obviously. You're going to be working down the cookie and up the cookie and then putting a few to each side. So I will show you how that works. Don't worry if they move around a little bit. They'll do that. Now I will tell you, most of the time I'll say you can do any of these decorating techniques on royal icing or fondant. Obviously, because we are working with so much water, you would not be able to do this on a royal icing cookie. If you were going to tuft it, you would have to tuft it with your royal icing. You would not be able to do the fondant. Try not to damage your previous piece. Actually, I did that a little bit backwards, so we'll take him out. He's going to go under here and come in and then lift up. This last one can be a little bit tricky, but Just kind of force him in. He'll eventually go for you. Let him know who's boss. And the biggest thing to be careful about is that you don't smush them, because you'll lose, like I said, that beautiful tufting. I like to work with 5 of my billow weave pieces at a time. If you find that you're slow and they're cracking, you can work with less. I wouldn't work with any more than that in case you have trouble getting them in. For these next pieces, you're going to overlap them and not spiral the first one in, but really tuck it down so that you can't tell. Now remember, you're going to have your awareness rose going over this, so if you can't get it in, that's fine. I cannot tell you how many that you're going to use because it's going to depend on the size of your cookie and whether or not you want to do the whole cookie or just part of it. Remember to keep, when you go back to spiraling, you want the right side up and the left side tucked in. You want to keep all of that the same so it doesn't look like it's going in a million different directions. And just bring in the little corners of each. I found for me it was easier to work up and down and then to the side. But however you are comfortable working and getting them on, go right ahead. The first one I did, I went too far out on the side and I just thought it was a little bit cumbersome. Now I brought these down to about a 6 on the pasta machine. If you don't have a pasta machine, you just want to bring it down thin enough. Remember, you already have some fondant under there. So you want to keep in mind, I'm breaking my own roll, you want the right side up. You want to keep in mind that you're going to be having a lot of fondant, so you don't want to make these too thick. You want to keep them as thin as possible without them ripping on you. 6 seemed pretty perfect. 8 was a little bit too thin. They didn't really want to hold their shape for me. So I'm going to go around this side, I think. And bring him in. And like I said, it's going to take a good 10 minutes before the ones that have been put on dry and attached properly. So don't worry if they move around. Just put them back into place and move your cookie so that you can see. I'm trying not to put my hand in the way so you can see how I'm getting these in. And because you have that extra time, you can always reposition. If you don't like the way something looks, you can take it off and reposition it a little bit. You've got that extra time to work with. This one really wants to move on me, doesn't he? I don't think I have enough water up here. Like I said, you don't want to use too much water. You don't want to watch your fondant start melting in front of your eyes and coming apart, but enough that it will attach. Which is again the reason why you could not use royal icing. So now that our roses are drying and we have our billow weave attaching to our cookie, we're going to make our ribbon, which is the trademark for the breast cancer awareness. And I am using a Jem ribbon cutter. And because the cookie is the size that it is, I'm just cutting off the excess here. Sometimes it doesn't always cut down. bag. But because our cookie's small enough, we want this 1/2 inch ribbon cutter. It's just perfectly the right size. So I'm going to take off the excess on this side. And I have more ribbons than I'm going to need for the one cookie. But I also have more cookies, so that's fine. So I'm going to take my ribbon and put it to the side. I'll take my extra ribbons and put them under a Stay Fresh mat. We'll move him out of the way. We'll bring our ribbon back in. And we want to give our ribbon just a little bit of movement because ribbons are some sort of material, whether it's cross grain or taffeta. It'll have a little bit of movement, so we want to give it a little bit of movement. And then I'm going to cross it over and make sure that I like the way it looks. It's fine. So we'll bring our cookie in. And for this, we are going to use a little bit of edible glue. It's a little, it just adheres a little bit better for this one little part. So I'm going to bring the ribbon in, figure out where I want them to be and how big I want the little opening to be. And that looks pretty good to me. And when I get to where I like, I'm going to go ahead and cut my tails. And they're always cut in a V shape. So we're going to bring this into a V shape. So there's one tail. And I'll bring it closer together just so I can, not that close together, so I can make sure that I'm pretty close in size. I can always move it up or down or in and out if I feel like I'm off a hair. So our ribbon has plenty of movement. And our tail is good. Just coming off the cookie there, so we'll fix that. I'm just going to play with it a little bit. Once we glue it into place, we won't be able to play with them too much. We'll open up our edible glue, move the scissors out of the way. And really, you just need a tiny little bit. You don't want to use too much. And start with the top here. And then what I like to do is put a little piece there and give that ribbon just a tad of a bend. Come in with your tool. The back of the tool actually looks better than the front. And the same thing here. You're going to want to put a little bit of glue where your, oh, I'll bring him back in, where your connection piece is, so that it stays connected. And then we'll bring in the last part of our ribbon, like so. And I want to make sure that's adhered pretty well. And that's even. So I'm just going to look at it quickly. I'll show it to you. And now we can bring in our roses. I decided on this one to just do 2 instead of the 3 like I did on the other one. But it's up to you what you want to do. And I'm just going to attach them with some royal icing and make a royal icing calyx. So I have a small PME petal leaf tip in here, an ST50. I'm just going to, I always like to pump out a little bit, make sure that everything is smoothly coming out, and it is. So on the first one, I'm going to put a glob right here. And then I'll pull my glob out. And even pressure. Keep that pressure going. And then release. And you'll have a little calyx. And I've shown you this several times. And if you follow your petals, you'll get your 5 calyxes to fit in just fine. So we'll just keep even pressure and bring them out. Now you could always also cut a parchment bag to make your leaf, and I can show you how to do that in another video. And then I'm just going to put a little blob here in case it got dried out, just so it adheres well. That's where I want it to be. And I've noticed that my calyx is falling, and I don't want that to happen. That's not the look that I'm going for this flower. I'd rather have them up. So we've got that one on, and we'll take the other one and just put him over here. So we'll do the exact same thing. I'm going to clean my tip off. Always make sure that you're working with a very clean tip. Make your glob and bring out your first sepal, which is what the part of the calyx is called. The little leaf parts are sepals. And if your rose isn't completely dry, just be really careful not to smoosh it. This rose is still a little bit wet, so I'm gingerly holding on to it as I add in my calyxes. And this time, before I add my glob, I'm going to adhere the calyxes down, so that way I don't have to worry about hurting anything. Then I'll just put a glob right there. It doesn't have to be a pretty glob, just a glob, something to hold that flower in place. I'll open back up that petal. And there you go. We have our breast cancer awareness Pinktober cookies. So I'll see you in the next video.